interpreter this morning is Kendi Esther. And these are the stories that are making headlines in the country. And we started off with Raila says a government oil deal is a scam. Now, opposition leader Raila Odinga has termed President William Ruto's government oil deal as a grand scam full of mischief to rip off Kenyans through exorbitant fuel prices. Now, with part of the proceeds going into the pockets of unnamed government officials, Odinga, in an address to the press at his Upper Hill offices, claimed that the Kenyan government have plunged the country into a fuel crisis occasioned by individuals in the executive who are using proxies to deal with 3 oil companies in the Gulf countries. Here are details of this report.
The cost of fuel shot up significantly after the deal. Why have things moved from bad to worse since the deal was signed? Well, the deal was a scam for which we now demand full disclosure and full accountability. It is corrupt and rotten to the core. It is state capture by Mr. Ruto and company and a conspiracy against the country. Ruto's collapsing the country while feeding Kenyans on lullabies. In August this year, 4 months after the deal, the government allowed Oryx Energies to sell oil at prices that had been inflated by 17%. In the Ruto deal, Oryx is a supplier of diesel to other oil marketing companies in the country. The excuse was to delay in discharging fuel at the jetty. This shady business model is being deployed by all the companies that were retained in the Ruto deal. We find that you are being charged 217 shillings, but the actual price would be 187 shillings. Now, where we are not sure is how that 30 shillings is being distributed, who is the beneficiary. Going to drive a number of oil marketing firms out of business, leading to job losses and loss of revenue for the government.
Majority Leader Kimani Ichung'Wah defends oil import deal. Now, the Kenya Kwanza administration has told Azimio leader Raila Odinga over claims that government oil importation is a scam. Majority Leader Kimani Ichung'Wah, who led a number of Kenya Kwanza legislators, termed the alleged dossier as nothing short of hot air and political propaganda. Now, the leaders accused Odinga of using the alleged dossier to score cheap political points so as to resuscitate his dwindling political fixtures.
His purported dossier lacked any substance and is evidently part of his usual propaganda rumor mills. Mr. Odinga, however, rightfully stated that the Kenya's Ministry of Energy and Petroleum did sign a deal with state-owned petroleum companies in the Middle East, in Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, Aramco in Saudi Arabia and ADNOC in the United Arab Emirates. Please underline that it was Mr. Odinga who asserted that indeed there is a signed contract between the Ministry of Petroleum in Kenya and state-owned petroleum companies from Saudi Arabia and UAE. Our question, therefore, to Mr. Odinga is what further definition of government to government would this be seeking if a contract signed between a state-owned enterprise in Saudi Arabia and one in UAE and a state ministry in Kenya is not government to government? What then is his new definition of government to government? Because this contract is signed, as he asserted himself, between the state-owned enterprises and the Ministry of Petroleum and Energy in Kenya.
Of living crisis. crisis. Now, disharmony in the running ministers and rising public resentment over new taxation measures were among issues conversed yesterday as President William Ruto led the executive arm of the government to a two-day retreat. Addressing the opening session, President Ruto called for cordial working relations between cabinet secretaries and principal secretaries as he rallied the executive to embrace what he termed as a new way of doing things.
We are one team. The success of each and every one of us is the success of all of us. The failure of each of us is the failure of our team. And therefore, we must never allow any one of us to fail. PSS must support their CSS. CSS must support their PSS. We've had to make very important decisions. Sometimes not very easy, sometimes not very pleasant, very difficult decisions to be able to take the country forward. Part of changing the way we do government business, we did agree that the mandate given to us by the people of Kenya is a sacred mandate. It is a mandate not just given to us by the people of Kenya, but also given to us, more importantly, by God.
Azimio has maintained that cost of living must be addressed. The national dialogue is facing the rocks with the cost of living and VAT on fuel among the demands that could stall Azimio Kenya Kwanza talks. Kenya leader Martha Karua has threatened a return to street protests should the bipartisan talks fail to address the priorities of Kenyans. Now, Azimio leaders issued a raft of demands to the National Dialogue Committee with the cost of living and reconstitution of IEBC ranking high in the list of irreducible minimums. Here are the full details.
Should the talks fail as they are looking, they are failing.
Yes.
We shall not forgo our rights. We shall go back to the streets if necessary. We are saying no to intimidation, and we are calling upon Kenyans to join and hold hands so that we restore sanity in our nation. In management of public affairs, we are employing people whose track record is well known. Corruption, land grabbing. We are giving a blank check. The suffering today, we must ask ourselves, when did the rain start beating us?
Tumesema gharama ya maisha mpaka irudi chini. Hiyo ni moja ya masharti ya mazungumzo yetu. Ingine ni kuundwa kwa tume ya uchaguzi. Tatu ni ukaguzi ya matokeo ya uchaguzi iliyopita. Nne ni mambo ya kutuingilia kwa vyama vingine vya kisiasa. Tumesema kama hawezi kukubali yale, hiyo tunasema hakuna mazungumzo.
Deployment of police officers. The National Assembly has passed a motion on deployment of 1,000 police officers for a UN-approved peacekeeping initiative in Haiti to help tame gangs that have been blamed for spiraling violence. Now, the High Court granted orders barring the deployment until a case lodged by the Third Way Alliance be determined. The judgment is set for January 26th next year. Now, during the heated session in Parliament, opposition leaders criticized the deployment, with Minority Leader Opiyo Wandayi terming the motion ill-advised. Those allied to the ruling Kenya Kwanza hailed the planned deployment, saying it put Kenya's image on the map.
You cannot use our police women and men as guinea pigs at the altar of rent seeking, because we know for sure that the motivation for this misadventure is money. Is money. People want to use our hapless police officers as guinea pigs in their bid to get cheap money.
We know that charity begins at home. Madam Speaker, where is the sense in taking 1,000 police officers to Haiti when Kenyans are dying in need of protection, in need of service from their police officers?
We should be leaders who think, reflect, and assist our president in making the right decisions, Mr. Speaker. We are not here just to rubber stamp what the executive wants. We are here to act in the best interest of the people we represent. The people who are going to Haiti could be my brother, it could be Galwale's brother, Mr. Speaker. Don't we think what exposure we are giving these Kenyans, Mr. Speaker?
So under what provision of the Constitution is this motion being brought before us to pass, Mr. Speaker?
We indeed as leaders should feel honored as a country that our country has been called up by the UN Security Council and other nations of the world to serve in restoring security and restoring the dignity of other human beings, whether they are black people or not. And that's why I said Croatians are not black people, they are not Africans, but we have participated in missions to secure their country, to make it and restore the dignity of the people of Croatia and other areas, including other African countries, Honorable Speaker.
If you come to Laikipia today, Madam Speaker, where the British Army used to train since colonial times to date, you will get children of mixed races. And these officers don't speak in Maasai language, and the Maasais don't speak the British language. But how these things happen, it is because security officers speak in silence.
Is that as we speak today, the training of these officers is ongoing on various issues. The issue of the language. You know, Haiti is a French-speaking country. We are an English-speaking country, Mr. Speaker. But again, the other countries, Mr. Speaker, who are going to give support together with Kenya are also French-speaking countries. So that concern, Mr. Speaker, has already been dealt with.
I like what the Mau veterans have told this committee, Mr. Speaker, that they just ensure that these people are properly compensated. They cite the 1913 and 1914 peacekeeping mission that Kenya participated in and how that provided an opportunity for them to live on a path of prosperity.
In Parliament, we're going to come to the end of the news that are making headlines in the country, but when we come back, we're coming back with stories that are making headlines in the dailies. Keep it science and we're back after the break.